80% of Andrew Tate, what he says is actually true. It's just he's saying it in the most hyperbolic way. As a man, you kind of have to have some sort of good finances to attract a female, but as a female, your financial situation rarely matters when actually going on dates and stuff. So you feel that if you're not in a relationship, you're missing something in life.
Well, yeah. When you're vulnerable, right? It's you think it's going to solve your issues, right? But then you realize it's not. It's yourself that's the problem. Well, I look at it like this. If you can't love yourself, can you really love another person?
I don't believe you can, but yeah, I agree with your statement.
Yeah, and if I struggle with something like that, right, I must improve myself.
So you struggle with self-love, you would say?
Yeah.
AiA episode 45, debating red pill and is it valuable? Again, we have Masterpvper, the person I had a conversation with and was on his podcast last time to debate red pill. He actually wanted to rehash this conversation. So, Masterpvper, have you changed your opinions on the red pill community?
Yes, I have. I'm a reformed man.
All right, and what opinions have you changed?
I believe that the three main points of the red pill community do hold some weight, and I think they are valuable to our modern lives because they do propose a solution to how to play the current game before you can reform the current game.
Okay, I'm not trying to hold a gun to your head here. Do you really believe that, or are you just, making that sort of judgment?
No, I just made that judgment.
Okay, I mean, so were you trolling in were you trolling in your podcast then? Was that something you were doing?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you disagree with me about on the red pill community?
I would probably disagree on one main point about the red pill community is probably not much, but maybe on how it could be helpful for most men, perhaps. But I do think the main points are helpful.
Well, I'm gonna say this. So I'm gonna be using your clips that you said in your podcast when we had our last conversation in this podcast, so we can actually get an idea of what you said for the people who didn't listen. But just for getting in your memory here, you said that most men nowadays cannot change habits or their lifestyle if they're stuck in one. So do you still believe in that, or is that something that maybe you've changed your opinion on as well?
I did change my opinion. I did change my opinion on it, but it's more of a I held this opinion before that other podcast. Yeah, I do believe most men can change if they tried hard enough. Sometimes maybe not because you can't really control your external factors. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
And you also said that instead of the red pill community, that you would recommend therapy and that sort of mental help to help men nowadays get women. Is that still something you believe in?
A little bit. I think it's still better than just listening to a person online. Mainly, you don't have to really just listen to your therapist. I'd say listen to your family members if they are good to take advice from. I'm not saying just listen to your relatives out of pure ignorance because that's a terrible thing to do at times. Where you get your information from is a complicated subject matter of when it comes to this type of thing in specific.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. But you seem to have really hardline opinion last time when it came to sort of mental health and stuff. You were bringing up depression rates and suicide rates, and basically men nowadays are more depressed than ever, and what they should seek is therapy, for themselves, which I would agree with if you're obviously are suffering from mental problems. But you seem to have the opinion last time when it came to that is most men should just always go through therapy no matter what if they're not getting women, because that will ultimately help them in the end. But now you sort of believe that maybe the red pill community is something they can turn to actually help improve their life.
Well, yeah. Just like the maybe third wave feminism movement, just as before, they helped women gain a voice in the in society as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the red pill community is just merely enforcing how valuable men are in our societies and how proper treatment of 50% of the population can be better for us, right?
Yeah.
So on that, I agree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the things I don't agree with are the radical sides, like I forgot the bald dude. Um, I forgot his name, but
The bald dude. Is he part of like the red pill community?
yeah, yeah, he used to be an MMA fighter.
Oh, Andrew Tate.
Yeah, I don't agree with his takes.
Um, I mean, Andrew Tate, like here's the thing about Andrew Tate. I said it before. I've actually made an episode on Andrew Tate debating XQC. Is that Andrew Tate will say a lot of hyperbolic things, and he will be very hyperbolic in his speech, and he will attract radical individuals. But the most important thing to remember with Andrew Tate is that a lot of the things he says are actually true. And I know that sucks to
Yeah.
hear for a lot of like, I don't know, just people on the left in general, but at least watching his debate with XQC and also watching his debate with like other people as well, because I know his content has basically been shared everywhere, especially with him being on Aiden Ross stream and stuff, is that 80% of Andrew Tate, what he says is actually true. It's just he's saying it in the most hyperbolic way.
Well,
Um,
yes, but again, just like how the best like points are made with a like how a best lie can be made with a hint of truth in it, or the best
mhm.
troll has a hint of truth to it. Like in the last episode, right? I was trolling and bringing up different statistics, right? And it was funny, but I would say when you take the truth and make it hyperbolic, right? You give a person a misconstrued like idea of what the truth really is if they are trying to interpret a certain subject through the lens of this person and not question it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it really comes down to, saying it when it comes down to it, because I think why Andrew Tate is so popular with, a lot of people out there, especially young males, is that he's saying these sort of things that, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. It seems like most people nowadays, and this might just be because my perspective, I'm on the left, is that they kind of have this kumbaya attitude of like, oh, you can do this and you can do that, but like, just do what you want and you'll be successful. That's not always the case. And I think
Well,
some
yeah.
people need to, I think some people just need to wake up to the fact that there are certain things you need to do in life if you want to achieve certain things. And it seems like people on the left just don't want to agree with like, hey, probably as a man, you should really focus on your job, really focus on how much money you're making, really work out and eat right and be, and then socialize around, obviously. And eventually, if you're in enough friend groups, you'll attract a lot of females to you. And then, you will be that will be, well, successful for you if you're looking for relationships. But it seems like people on the left just don't want to agree with that because they look at it as toxic masculinity or whatever. I don't know what you would call it, but that seems to be when I've had conversations with people on the left before, and they have those same sort of opinions, and I just don't understand that.
Well, I don't understand when people bring up toxic masculinity. I mean, I believe a person can have negative traits brought up from like maybe past childhood trauma or stuff like that, but mainly masculine traits are just traits typically exhibited by males, right? And these traits
Typically,
have
yes.
helped men be successful throughout most of their lives, culturally speaking, in the Western world. Masculinity has been interpreted in a variety of ways in different cultures.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
so,
toxic masculinity comes down to when there's certain things that men do, but they hurt other people. So it's like when you talk about like physical aggression or like domination in a certain way, that's like hurting other people. That's toxic masculinity, right?
well,
Like, would we
well,
agree with
yeah,
that?
I would agree with that. I mean, I believe masculinity does have its like drawbacks, I guess.
I'm not saying
But
masculinity is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm
yeah, I
just saying
know.
that there
I
there
know
are
you're not
negative
saying
things
that.
that could happen, and that's
Well,
what
yeah,
people should be referring to.
but I wouldn't be. I wouldn't. I don't think it's fair to say it's just masculinity itself that causes that stuff to be a byproduct of what that person's doing. You with that logic, you can say some of femininity is also toxic because
Yeah, there's
women
toxic
typically are
femininity
not.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you could say women are like typically passive aggressive. Thus, they are. How would I put this? Thus, they are deceitful, right?
I would straight up say this. People can call me a misogynist for us, but yes, women are very passive aggressive, and it's very annoying. And it's hard to deal with. It's very hard to deal with, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but but you also have to look at the same side when you're looking at men, and they are typically a lot
Mhm.
more physically aggressive. So I mean, again, they have I think feminism, or I think femininity and masculinity both have negative traits. We look at them.
Well,
Which
yeah.
ones are worse, though? I don't know. I think a lot of people would say toxic
Neither.
masculinity is worse.
I would say neither though, because like again, femininity and masculinity go hand in hand, and it's kind of like how would I put it? When you put both of them together, it's like an indestructible triangle. I would say they can't like they do a really good job at covering each other's weaknesses,
Yeah.
and if done incorrectly, they can perhaps make the weaknesses appear even more so.
I mean, I think it's just like toxic masculinity hurts a lot more people than toxic femininity does. But maybe I could be wrong, just because like toxic masculinity is like very heavily correlated with like physical aggression,
Yeah.
right? And like that's like directly hurting people physically. So that's where I would say
Well,
that.
I wouldn't say like again. I think a very small amount of it would be toxic masculinity when it comes to physical violence. Because I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah,
I don't know.
because I've known like very violent females before that
Well, I'm
would
just
like,
talking about like
yeah.
in like a domestic situation, if the
Oh
man
yeah,
was
yeah.
that's toxic masculinity right there.
Yeah, typically speaking, most domestic abuse victims that are physically anyway are female. Yeah,
Yeah, so
but
to get back to it, like a lot of people on the left really call the red pill community and what the red pill community does as toxic masculinity, which maybe there could be some aspects to it, but I don't see how like having status and making a lot of money and going to the gym and like socializing as toxic masculinity. I just think that's being, that's just setting yourself up for success in relationships.
well,
Um,
I don't even think that would be like a masculine trait type thing deal because women also strive for status.
yeah, but they strive
Um,
for status in different ways.
well, yeah, yeah. But like in feminism, they had a push for women to be economically independent, right? Which is why there's more women in the workforce than ever. So in a way, they have shifted more towards financial status than
Yeah,
just like social
they definitely
status.
have. But here's the thing. Here's why financial status is so important for men is that as a man, you kind of have to have some sort of good finances to attract a female, but as a female, your financial situation rarely matters when actually going on dates and stuff. Like you can look at this because when it comes to men dating women that make less than them, it's not really a factor. But when it comes to women dating men that make less than them, it's a massive factor. You can look at all sorts of data when it comes to this, and they practice hypergamy, at least women do, where they only date up or at least across the grid and up when it comes to men earning, their salary. And,
Well,
men have to look at that. And the problem that men are having
I
so much nowadays is that they in their 20s are not making what women do because of, well, then you have to go into the college statistics, and it's a 60-40 split for women, so women are making more in their 20s than men are, so obviously a lot of men in their 20s are broke and not obviously having sex. So when you look at all these factors combining, that's why men are struggling right now, is because they're just the females are out earning them. I'm not saying that's a bad
well,
thing or a good thing, but that's
yeah.
what's happening.
Well, I like to look at it in this aspect, really. When you look, I like Jordan Peterson's take, though, on this. Even though I
Okay.
don't agree with him on much, I like his psychology stuff. So when you have people where women are gradually graduating at faster rates and on top of the class more often than men, right?
Hmm.
This isn't just because men are dumber than women. This is because the school system isn't really appealing to men that often, right? Men typically like to do certain things. We're more like aggressive or outspoken than women. Women are typically in the back of the class, paying attention, quiet, compared to a guy. Um, but the problem with that is when you tell a person to be silent in the classroom or not allowed to express any of their traits, such as I don't know, like wanting to play with like pretend guns with like as a child. I don't know. I find it that like stuff like that a bit obnoxious in the school system.
Well, yeah, but then you could also just look at it in the aspect of society of like an outspoken man is looked at as a leader and an alpha male, but an outspoken female is looked at as a bitch. So it's
That
just
is true.
that's just what society looks like. And yeah, I would agree with that. That's a problem with the school system that really affects men hard. But at the same time, that, that's how the school system's set up. Do I wish it would change more in the men's favor? I mean, yeah, but we don't want to go back to the sort of problem that where men are having more of the success than women. I'm glad that women are having more success now. It's just, of course, it's at the men's detriment, but we kind of have
Well,
to
yeah.
accept that in a way because it's like, look back hundreds and hundreds of years. Women have always been getting the short end of the stick. Now they're finally, for the first time ever, maybe in the first 10 years, getting the long end of the stick. And now all of a sudden we have to say, oh no, we have to pull back the women. It's like, no, I just don't agree with that. But
Well,
then,
yeah, I do.
it,
I do agree
it
with you on that.
yeah, it's really hard to balance. I think that we need to change some societal norms in order for like to balance out the dating market again. Like one of the biggest things is like how much your partner earns. If women are earning more than men nowadays, they kind of have to accept maybe they're going to be with a man that earns less than them. But that might have to be something they accept. I just don't think they are going to accept it because
Well,
look at any study out there, women don't want to date broke men. That they just don't want to date that. And that's why Andrew Tate, what he says is actually true, whether you like it or not.
well, yeah, I agree with him on that point. But in like a way, I think there's a bigger problem as a whole in the way we structure our personalities in the modern world, right? You'll have a person that bases their personality off of just one thing alone, right? And then you'll have, let's say hypothetically, I've seen this as a big problem with the younger generation. They'll base their whole identity off of like having a fake disorder or being gay, right?
Hmm.
Um, we need to teach the younger population how to actually mature with their personalities, or I guess their character.
Yeah.
So when a person actually goes into the dating market, right, the two can actually find out who they click with, and perhaps maybe the divorce rates will go down. I don't know, but I just think it would be an easier way to deal with that problem as a whole.
I think it would be. Um, I I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about like changing society, I don't really know how we change the sort of attitude where I mean, I guess it's like showing people data in a sort of way, like saying, "Here, look, women are out earning men nowadays. Would you be okay with dating a man that makes less than you?" I don't know if women will ever sort of like agree with that. Um, but then we also have to look at the side of like, let's say if society doesn't change, well, what do we tell these men? Well, we have to say, well, dating's harder than ever now, so you kind of have to make a lot of money. So you kind of have to like grind your 20s out to like in order to get to a position where you do make a lot of money, and then in hopes of getting a woman. That's sort of like the red pill kind of like dating sort of I guess tactic, I would say.
Well,
But that
yeah,
but the problem with that is that well, you're going to be lonely your whole 20s because it's going to be like, well, you're undesirable because you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of status
Well,
and you kind of
think
just are
about it
grinding
this way,
away.
Claymore. It's not just the men that are feeling lonely. When you look at the population statistics, when more men are feeling just lonely, women are also feeling lonely because, again, you don't just 20% of the men can't be dating like the 70% of females, right?
Hmm.
So logically speaking, I believe there has to be more loneliness with females too, because you can't just have the top 20% of men dating, right? And then getting the majority of the females, and then having a hookup culture that just leaves you. I guess how's the best way people have described it? Like unfulfilling.
Yeah, it's unfulfilling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
How would you describe the hookup culture as someone who is like a part of like the
Yeah.
really young Zoomer generation? Like, how do you see it?
I'd like to stay out of it. I mean, it's there for me, even when it's probably not supposed to be. Like random people will like start talking to me, and I'll be like, "Hello, what's up?" etc. And I just don't find like a short-term relationship appealing to me. As I don't know, many people like to experiment in my age group with certain things like this, right? Because
Hmm.
everyone's curious and like, oh, it's cool to have sex now, this and that, and like, I'm just like, but will it at the end fulfill you or make you happy?
I mean, for
And I look at the
some
long
people it
term.
will, but I
Well,
mean,
yeah. I mean, the minority of people anyway. Yeah, minority. Majority of people though want something more, especially when they're lonely.
yeah.
All a lonely person wants is to feel loved. That is all it is in the core.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't fulfill loneliness, but I think also another big thing in, well, I guess today's society is all about like loving yourself in a sort of way, which is a good message to have. I
Well,
totally agree
yeah.
with. But it's like when you sort of love yourself so much, you might be fulfilled without a relationship because more people nowadays are not in relationships than not. And I think that at least the most recent numbers is over half of Americans aren't dating now. Like over half of Americans aren't dating or in a relationship or whatever. So it might go to show that a bigger majority of people nowadays are a lot more happier with just themselves and they might have hookup sex every now and then, but they don't need a relationship in order to be happy. Because I feel like that's always been a thing for a lot of people is like, if I'm not in a relationship, then I'm not happy. Because I mean, I guess it was perpetuated by religion and also like just societal norms back in the day. But it was like you had to be married at like 18, 19. But now people just aren't getting married anymore. And if they are, it's in their late 30s, which I don't know. I see as a better thing because I rather people be happy with themselves than be in relationships all the time. Because I mean, it's just, I don't think that's a fulfilling life to just be in a relationship to be happy. You should be happy with yourself and the life you live.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I believe though more people though still want to be in a relationship than just be alone. Because when I look at a person, I
I would
typically
say
see
yes.
people as more
Yeah.
social than I am even.
Yeah. But
Um,
wouldn't you say
yeah.
this, that it would be as fulfilling just being like having a good group of friends that you can connect with and talk with? Like, isn't that just as fulfilling as being in a relationship?
Yeah, I would say so. It's less upkeep than a relationship, definitely.
Yes.
But for me personally, it doesn't really work like that, right? I don't know why, but it's just like that. I don't know, something biologically within me or something like that. But
So you feel that if you're not in a relationship, you're missing something in life.
well, yeah, it's kind of like missing an experience, if you will, right? Like, it might be out of my malice to disprove certain people in my life that I can be happy in a relationship or something like around those lines. But that's just me personally. Many other people will have different reasons for wanting to be in a relationship. And that's the most important thing with the relationship is the motive of being in said relationship.
That's interesting. Hmm.
I
I don't
don't know how
know.
to describe it. I describe it for me personally. If when you ask that question, I'm still learning a lot of stuff about myself currently.
Yeah, exactly. I
Who
understand.
isn't though?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. It's more of like a conservative view, right? Because conservatives will view this like if they're not married by like a certain age or a certain time, then they're like unfulfilled in life, right? And I don't
Well,
know. uh, Would you
I
call
guess it
yourself
depends on how
more?
you.
Uh, okay, yeah, yeah. Go on.
Well, I'm not really conservative in the traditional sense. I mean, maybe you can say I'm conservative a little bit socially, but even then, I think that's a stretch.
So,
I'm more of like a mix of many traditional factors in my life.
well, it seems like you're socially conservative in the way of relationships because you feel like you're missing something without a relationship. And like conservatives traditionally have that view of that, you should be in a relationship because it's a deeper connection than you would ever have with a friend or
Well,
something.
yeah, I guess in a sense, but I don't think it's the best solution for everybody, as like a conservative would say.
But for you, it is.
Yes,
Okay.
I like to use reasonable takes when I'm actually thinking about something like this.
Yeah,
And the
I
reasonable option would
understand.
be, for me personally, this works, but for others, I can understand why it wouldn't work. It's kind of like a I don't know, it's like a duality in social life, I guess, in my social life.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah. So I don't know. Is your goal right now to like be in a relationship? Like, do you always need to be in
No,
one? Or
no,
okay.
I think I should improve myself first, work on myself, and then
Oh,
there we
so
go. I'm
like
now
the
worthy.
like the red pill community says.
Yeah.
Interesting. It all ties back.
Why do you think I was trolling this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were, to be honest. But I don't know. It was a fun episode. If you guys haven't checked out the latest video on my channel, the one before this, definitely recommend it because it was quite off the rails. I mean, yeah, like it seems like you agree with the base level things of the red pill community, because I think if you really look at it, you want to be your best self so you can meet the best person that you can at the time. Because if
Well,
you live
I
as a slob your whole life, you're probably not
yeah,
going to
yeah.
meet anyone, or at least anyone
Well, I
good.
look at it like this: if you can't love yourself, can you really love another person?
I don't believe you can, but yeah, I agree
Precisely.
with your statement. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
Um,
if I struggle with something like that, right, I must improve myself.
so you struggle with self love, you would say.
Yeah.
Is it like debilitating or is it like minor?
It's minor in the sense that it makes me hard. It's hard for me to actually form a social relationship sometimes and trust the person.
Like a relationship, not just a friendship?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah, that's yeah. What were you gonna say?
yeah. I think that is more common nowadays too, though, with the younger generation.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say so.
may, yeah, especially when quarantine hit. I think it may have like exacerbated it just a little bit because now you
Yeah.
can't like really go for your walks, you can't socialize more, etc. Think of like a 15-year-old, for example, right?
Hmm.
He's now stuck in quarantine, right? And he just wanted to go hang out with his friends that weekend. Now he can't. Or
Yeah.
and now it's harder for him to get exercise. Now he's eating more and getting more obese. Like these are kind of realistic examples of what happened over the pandemic.
Yeah,
Right.
I definitely agree with that. Uh, so would you say like it would be harder for most people to self-love nowadays?
Maybe. I'm not fully sure of that. I don't know how accurate the statistics really are because judging a well being of a person is really hard considering it's a subjective experience.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I wanted to talk about I don't know my personal experience with self-love, but I don't know. I think
Go
when I
ahead. I want to hear yours.
yeah, it's like when I was younger, back in my day, high school years. I remember like being so fixated on like, oh my gosh, I need to be in a relationship because like I don't feel like complete, or I just like don't like love myself whatsoever. But it was when I started like loving myself and sort of like accepted like a loner type lifestyle of like, I might have some friends, I might not, but it's fine. I'll still love myself. And it was around 20. And I remember when that switch flipped for me. And then now for the past like 2, almost 3 years, I've felt like I don't know. It's obviously a loner lifestyle, but I felt great. And I think I felt so great that I haven't even felt the need to be in a relationship. Like it was only in the past 2 years that I felt for like the first time in like a decade that like I don't need to be in a relationship. And that was like a big revelation for me because it was like, did I love myself too much now to where now I don't want to be in a relationship? Or was I never in a relationship? So then it just like the feeling passed over me. I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. For those of you who don't know, I've never been in a relationship before. But I don't know. I don't know if I passed that threshold of I just wasn't in a relationship. So therefore, like now I don't have that feeling for one, or
Well,
maybe I just need to meet the right person. It's difficult to figure out, I think.
well, I have, and it's like when you're vulnerable, right? It's you think it's going to solve your issues, right? But then you realize it's not. It's yourself that's the problem, which hurts, right? But
Hmm.
like again, what can you do but improve yourself? And that's one thing the red pill community has gotten right, in my opinion. Like, given maybe some people's takes on certain things may be wrong, etc. It's not a war about who's right or who's wrong. It's about what is the most effective solution at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think self love, self care, improving yourself is probably like one of the most important things people can do in their lives, regardless of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's, I don't know, it seems like we share the same opinion on like just like the red pill community in general, right? Where it's like
Yeah,
you seem to agree with their main points, as do I, because I've said before, like I don't personally like the red pill community, but like their main points that they preach are very hard to disagree with. And,
definitely.
those points really seem to help in anyone's life, regardless of like where they are in life.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone out there can improve on some level, help themselves on some level. And I think personally, any form of improvement in your life is going to lead to happiness, or at least some form of happiness. It might be temporary, but still, it's going to lead to some of it. Like if you're a
Yeah.
little bit overweight and then you dropped it, then I think it would lead to a little bit of happiness, but eventually you would get complacent of that happiness and then you wouldn't really feel it anymore. That's kind of how it goes.
Well, look at it this way: like we live in a world where there is more stimulation, right?
But that's
And when
true.
you're
Yeah.
more overstimulated than ever, certain things in life just become dull. Like, look at the last time you played video games.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, your favorite video game becomes dull. I haven't played Minecraft in 2 months.
Jeez.
Yeah, and and that's like one of the things you just don't get happiness from the same things you used to be, and then you leave yourself wondering why you don't feel happy. And the overstimulation is a big part of that.
So are you I don't know if we want to get into philosophy real quick, but this is one of like my main like foundational personal philosophy beliefs that I've always believed in, that I've always tried to hold myself to, and that is live your life in moderation of everything. And I do this with the most basic things in life and the most complicated things in life. So I moderate things all the way down to like food and sleep. And I guess you could say masturbation because I don't have sex. But all of those things I moderate in my life very heavily. And I also moderate other things like, whether it comes to like people, relationships, like finances, focusing on my job, my work, my education, whatever. I always moderate my life because I just feel that moderation is extremely important to, keep a balanced and healthy life. Uh, is that sort of something you agree with or sort of something you live by?
I agree with it. Like it's definitely a good thing to live by, moderation, right? And I
Hmm.
feel like if you live a moderate lifestyle, it's okay to overindulge sometimes.
I think it is too.
Moderation
Yeah.
in itself isn't something I figured out yet, right?
Okay.
Mainly because I'm just young, right? I'm working out the basic things of like social skills, etc.
Yeah.
So, like, my ability really is to be more, I guess, maybe more self-aware about my surroundings. That's my thing. um, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you do agree with the moderation lifestyle. And I will say that it takes time to build. It's almost like, well, it basically is like building discipline in that sort of way. Like, because you want to build a discipline of like, you want to work out at least moderately, you know, a couple times a week, right? But it's also a discipline you're building because like you have to do it a couple of times a week. And it's the same thing with like if you're moderating your sleep and you want to get a certain amount of sleep, well, you still have to go to sleep at a certain time and wake up at a certain time. So it's building this discipline in this way um, that is extremely hard to build. But once you build it and you get into that habit, then the moderation becomes like much easier. Like, is there sort of something nowadays that you do in moderation? Like, have you started out doing something in moderation?
I would say I'm starting to maybe try to. I guess I'm trying to diet and eat meat in moderation, really.
Okay. So
Um,
you started moderating your food intake, which is probably one of the most basic things, right?
well, yeah, I always kind of have done that by myself. Like when I'm full, I'm
It's
not going
good.
to overeat.
Yeah,
Probably is why I'm like 161 pounds at 6 feet tall. But yeah,
that's pretty good. I mean, if you can moderate your food now, just think about how those habits are going to build over time, right? Because like I remember I quit drinking soda at 15 years old. I haven't had soda like since then. And it's been like 7 years. So obviously it's like that amount of time, it's built up and it's like very easy now. But I remember like when I first started, it was incredibly hard. Um, but
yeah, I would agree.
the fact you are starting now is good though, because like, if you're moderating your food intake at 16, think about how you're going to be when you're like my age at like 22. Like then you're going to be like really good at moderating your food.
Well, to me, it's like do or die, right? I won't like one of my things is I won't die kneeling. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die trying. And in this case, I'm gonna die living.
Gotcha. Yeah,
What I find though is many people stay complacent, and that's their problem.
true. That's the one thing
Many, yeah,
I try to live by. If you don't know, I did write a rules for life for myself. That was like a very early podcast episode. I think it was like my fourth one or something. But I did do a podcast episode where I basically wrote my rules of life, and like one of my rules was like don't become complacent. And I don't know, complacency is a hard thing to sort of like measure because like we get into these sort of routines in our life. And, I think how to not be complacent is replacing something that you've already done and you've already worn out with something new because you don't want to keep adding things to your life because that's going to keep getting more chaotic and eventually you're going to
yeah,
crash.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I think a lot of people misconstrue that of they're like, oh, like I'm doing all these things. Now I need to add something else. It's like, no, you need to probably get rid of something and then add something new.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you
Yeah.
not become like complacent in life? Like what is your sort of
Um,
methodology with that?
I honestly don't know. I've always had like a bit of fight in me. I don't know. I had to have it. If I didn't, well, then I would have not been who I am or what I am today. Some people are just born. I think some people are just born with the fight in them. Some are not. But even if you're not born with the fight in you, you probably can acquire it through life experiences. And I guess
Yeah.
maybe it's the life experiences that shaped me. Because typically I'm not really physically aggressive. I'm not verbally aggressive. Um, but when someone tries to push me, right, that's when I do a flip. Like like when you back me into the corner, that's when I'm not complacent.
So you would say you're best when you're stressed.
I yeah, I do perform good under pressure. That's probably my I'd say that's a problem too.
Well, I think it's a good thing because, like, personally, if you are good under stress, that means what you need to do when you're good is have a healthy amount of stress, and then you'll eventually become, good or just like
Maybe.
better. Like I put that stress on myself in college when I started my bachelor's degree because once I got into university, it was self-paced. And the good
Yeah.
thing about self-paced is obviously you can go on your own pace, but the faster you complete it, the less you pay. So it was always a fight for me of completing it as fast as I could so I wouldn't have to pay as much and like go into debt and shit. So
Yeah.
I like pushed myself to a point where I was always stressed about college. And then I turned out for my bachelor's and my master's, I got them in like very good time. And I had a 4.0 GPA in both of them.
Yeah. I would say that I've yeah. I mean I guess that's probably one of the better ways to push myself to do better. But typically setting goals and sticking to them is what I'm trying to do. Um, Psychologically speaking, I think I might do something called stoicism, which I like the idea of. But yeah,
How would you describe that in your everyday life?
stoicism is more of like maybe purposely putting yourself through harm, knowing it could be worse.
Oh, I would say I practice that as well.
That's something I would like to try. Mainly because it's such a beautiful philosophy on how you should want to. It's a practical use of your life, right?
Yeah, you put
And
yourself in
ancient Greeks
uncomfortable.
developed it.
Yeah, you put yourself in uncomfortable situations to learn more about yourself, but also to make the better situations even better. And I
Yeah,
think that it also definitely connects with my moderation theory or how I live my life in moderation is because I want to live my life in moderation of things I like. So when I do those things, I even feel better doing them. If I played video games every day, which I don't anymore, but if I did, then they would become very dull to me. But since I play them like every other day or every 3 days, then video games are very fun. And that's the same way when it comes to stoicism of like, putting yourself through painful things. And then, obviously, after the pain has subsided, you learn some things about yourself. And it's also like you are more appreciative of your natural state of being. That's why like high intensity workouts are very beneficial when it comes to that. But yeah, I would
yeah,
definitely say like I practice both of those things in life.
yeah. I mean, maybe the only negative thing that I've had when it came to certain things, like maybe like one of the problems with maybe men, or I guess maybe if you subscribe to that, is maybe you will become a adrenaline junkie just a little bit. Um,
I would say a little bit, yeah.
yeah,
Or you would constantly be.
I've become one because like I used to just like, you know what, it's time to get into some good old fashioned brawls for fun.
Yeah, it's like I think maybe when you subscribe to those so hard, you try not to live like a normal-ish life where that becomes your life. Like you always have to be careful when you subscribe to something to not let it consume your life. And the problem is with me is that I'm like very compulsive when things I do. So like if I like something, I just want to do it over and over and over again, and I want it to consume my life. And that's like a big problem because if you let like that sort of like ideology or belief in your life, whether it's stoicism or moderation, then you're going to just become like a hard lighter when it comes to that and then always live by that. Like, because I don't think I can let myself indulge in certain things because like I've subscribed to this moderation theory my entire life at this point, and I just can't step out of it.
Well, I guess so. I mean, if I have someone that would want to challenge my position on like maybe how I think of things socially, I guess I would invite them to do so. But like
On your
maybe
podcast?
yeah. But socially speaking, like I took my physical aggression, right, and I geared it towards making myself want to accumulate knowledge more. And it led me into debating people on certain subjects, such as philosophy, science, etc.
And you starting a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, we all have dark parts to us, and those who deny we have the dark parts, I think, are just blatantly lying. Because everyone
Yeah.
has have dark thoughts. You can be the most empathetic person in the world, and you'll still want to maybe punch someone. It's just how humans are.
Yeah, I think it depends on how
When,
you act on those thoughts, though. But yeah, sure.
yeah, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think like maybe turning it into something that you like, turning that aggression and turning it into something you do proactively is also a good step for life.
Of course.
Yeah. But when it comes to like maybe the modern day of like you don't have to take self responsibility is the problem, right?
Yeah, that's a really big problem I've had with the left. And I've said this over and over on my podcast. It seems that the left cannot admit that you need to take personal responsibility with your life. Like, that's the only reason I still am like, I listen to Jordan Peterson because mainly for his psychology and his self help. But like, the one thing he's always preached, and that's been like always, he's always said, like, personal responsibility. And for some reason, people on the left are so scared of those two words because they just cannot bring themselves to agree to, like, hey, you might need a little personal responsibility in your life to stop smoking crack and put the pipe down, you know? But it seems like they just cannot agree with simple facts like that. I don't know. I'm someone who is a big like advocate for personal responsibility. Like no matter where you are in life, you can improve yourself and you can get to a better position. But it's just I don't know. I think people on the left really sort of just totally degrade personal responsibility and basically say it's something you should never even worry about because it's like not even a thing or not even worth worrying about. But I mean, I just like, what would you say about personal responsibility? Are you more of like the conservative side or the left side of it?
Maybe a conservative side because I believe if you're unhappy at the end of the day, it's probably your fault. Because you always have control of only one thing, and that would be the state of your mind.
True.
Um, for those that hide behind deterministic factors such as government or their external factors, I think are cowards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Um, I think to sit there and hide behind the curtain of ignorance is maybe the greatest sin that we've committed
Yeah.
as humans. We complain about being in Plato's cave, and yet we willingly put ourselves in it.
Yep.
And that's the problem.
It is a
It's,
big problem. I'd agree.
humans are hypocrites, and people that only put themselves into identity politics are definitely like that. Um, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not like a political commentator. Well, I might be a little bit now, but I don't know.
kind of.
Yeah. But I think like yeah, that's pretty much my wrap on how I think of things. Mostly, I have a reasonable opinion, I think, but yeah,
Well, you think you have a reasonable opinion, right?
yeah. I
I
mean, it
would,
may not be reasonable to someone else.
yeah, I mean, I would say you do, especially coming on this my podcast and like explaining yourself more on the red pill community, not really trolling like you did last week on your podcast. I get it because again that podcast was absolutely insane if you haven't watched it already. But I mean, yeah, you have pretty I guess I would say understandable opinions now. You have a healthy view, I think, of like both sides, and you can sort of parse through both of them to see the positives and the negatives, and you're not like a bipartisan person of like you only agree with one side because they are your side and you can't agree with anyone else because like those are the people I hate the most. Um, but I mean, yeah, I think you answered everything pretty well, honestly. Do you have any questions for me, I guess?
My question for you is rather simple. What do you think? Where do you think we're heading as a society when it comes to these social issues?
Which social issues?
Identity politics in specific. Like
Um, just
like for
identity politics?
example,
Okay, for
like
example, yeah.
yeah, like for example, like how do you think the male and female thing is going to pan out when women are definitely outlining men, not just by
Um,
the slight margin it is currently.
So I think this is what's going to happen. Either we will have societal changes. I think we will personally. Societal changes will come, but I think they'll come a lot more slowly. But I also see a very heavy decrease in the male population. Again, I'm not talking like 10%. I'm talking like 1 or 2%, but still on a grand scale, that's a lot of percentage. And that's basically due to suicide. It seems like suicide is just on the rise and will keep rising for most men out there. That could be partially due to the pandemic, but also partially due to obviously like a lot of single virgin men out there. Um, Sex robots might save us. I'm not saying like they're coming anytime soon, but they could.
Just hook
But
me up with your vendor.
yeah, I mean, personally, how I see it is that it's going to be a little bit of social change, a little bit of male suicide, sadly, and then a little bit of sex robots. And I think that'll all combine into what we're kind of heading with that, personally.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. But
And maybe more
I
people
don't
just,
know.
well, also one of my other theories, again, I just see this with a lot of people, is that maybe more and more people are just, since there's so many distractions you can have in society now, like you have your computer, you have your phone, you have social media, you have all these things you can do. More and more people don't have times for relationships or traditional relationships. So more and more people could just not be in a relationship because I mean I think we're trending that way. Most people aren't in relationships, and and it seems to be a good majority of the people that aren't in relationships aren't really looking or trying because they have other things they're pursuing, which I think is really good because I don't know, I think the internet has kind of opened that door for a lot of people of exploring their interest and exploring their passions. At least it did for me. So I think for a lot of people, they want to be focusing on those things and they're not going to be focusing on a relationship.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know about that. Like, I'd make an argument that maybe computer life makes us a bit more unhappy because again, we're by nature designed to do intensive exercise, and there's a reason why you can run a marathon. The average person can probably run a marathon if they put their mind to it.
Yep.
We're not like I don't think we're not even solitary creatures by nature. We're like some of us are just a mix of social and solitary, and some of us are just really social.
Yes.
So only get your socialization off of like electronics or not have any meaningful connections is also like a gut punch to a random person.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but that just seems to be how society's heading. I'm not saying that's like a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not trying to say that, but I am saying
Well,
that I don't think
the thing,
computers are going anywhere. I don't think the online space is going anywhere in society. I think it's only growing, and I think just more and more people are going to be a part of it. Like that's just
well,
what's going
yeah,
to happen.
but I feel like we have to regulate it though. That's the thing is the USA
And
just doesn't like
that
USA. The world doesn't really like to regulate things they should.
that's a different conversation, but I just
Yeah,
see it like this. You kind of have to have an online presence now if you want to live in society. I mean, just think about that. All the banks you use are online. All like your job application and your job presence is online. it seems to be like you can't just live an offline life. You have to live online to an extent. And that's just the nature of the internet. You have to live online for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah,
So
I
what
think
else would you say if you had a question for me?
I don't really have any more questions. This was actually a pretty good time.
Yeah, it was good having you on the podcast, man. I'm glad to have you on. It was a pleasure talking to you again, and also for you, I guess, repealing your previous statements of trolling, whatever that was on your podcast, hyperbolic or not. It was funny, but I guess these are your real takes, you would say, right?
I have my real takes and I have my troll takes. I like to mess around every now and then.
Yeah, so you're not like an anti-establishment, crazy conspiracy person who you came off with in the last show.
No, I'm not. I'm not like pulling an infinite here, but yeah.
Yeah, that's an inside joke, everyone. But yeah, it was I think it was a good show. If you want to come on my podcast again, you're always welcome. I like to have
All
people
right.
on. That's honestly, again, that's what this podcast was made for, but then I just couldn't get anyone to come on the podcast, and it's been like a solo show for the past, like, I don't know, 5 6 months now. So like you're the first person to come on since like episode 20, I think. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I hope to
perhaps
have more.
we'll.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to grow this out though. It'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to have more debates on my podcast, obviously, because that's sort of what it was made for. It's hard to get people on, but I mean, I think the bigger I grow as a YouTuber and the more views I get and the more subscribers I get, more and more people are gonna like want to be on like my podcast, obviously. But yeah, just
Yeah.
thanks for
Yeah.
coming on. And anyways, everyone, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, see ya.
Yeah.